I'm James Walker, and this is Real Talk, Real People. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. I guess you could call this an impromptu podcast. I actually wasn't going to have a podcast for 2 weeks. I'm taking 2 weeks off, and we reran a conversation last week that I thought was very important, and that was about children's mental health. But I decided that I needed to get something off my chest. I guess you could say I'm pissed off, and let me just keep this as a very upbeat podcast, so to speak, and not use what I call gutter language. And so let's just say that I'm angry and I'm a little frustrated. The reason for this is, can somebody please explain to me what the hell is going on in the Black community? What is going on? I mean, it just seems that we're just falling apart. There is just such a vast difference between in the Black community from when I grew up to now, and I just don't get it. I mean, we can talk all day long about poverty and all the rest of that stuff, opportunity, housing, and so forth and so on. You know, we can talk about that and use that as an excuse. But it's always been that way for us. We know we're always going to have problems with housing. We know it. We know that police will always hone in on our neighborhoods. We know it because that's the way we grew up. So we know it. We know there's never going to be affordable housing. We know that they're never going to improve our neighborhoods. We know this already. We've always known this. We knew it when I was a kid. So we can't use that as an excuse for what is going on with our children today. And I mean, what is going on with them is turning into a nightmare. It is such a nightmare that you can't turn on the news, you can't pick up a newspaper without seeing a Black face and crime, guns, violence, robbery. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. We are talking in many cases, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids out here running amok, out of control, stealing cars, robbing, doing stupid things. I mean, just absolute stupid things. And I just have a question to ask. Where are their parents? And I'm serious about that. Where are their parents? I do know that we have a lot of single mothers working hard and trying to raise kids in a very tough environment. But we have too many fatherless Black kids, just too many, and it is evident no matter which way we look. They are overshadowing all the good that a lot of our young Black youth are doing. They are overshadowing a lot of the good and strides that are being made in the Black community. That is how bad it has become. Folks, I don't know where we go from here, but something has to be done. You know, this thing that I'm talking about here right now, this problem that I'm talking about really kind of came to light over the weekend for me when I was texting with some former coworkers from the New Haven Register. And it just seemed that, you know, there was a desperate plea for someone to step forward and talk about the problems that we are having in the Black community. Many of them and comments were fatherless. We have too many fatherless Black kids. There doesn't seem to be any discipline in the household. And I've got to say that's true when you have 12, 13, 14, and 15-year-old kids out here because they come home. And they're not coming home during the day. They're coming home in the wee hours of the morning. It's a tough situation, and I know it. It's a tough situation. We have too many Black women who are trying to raise kids in a tough environment, and it is a tough environment for them. What is the answer? I don't know, but I can tell you one thing, and one thing seriously is missing from the Black community these days, and that is pride. When I was growing up, and I know we talk about generations and all the rest of that stuff, but it's true. You should look to your elders because we can teach you something. When I was growing up, we had the same kind of situation, drugs in the community, lack of housing, lack of maintenance, all the rest of it, and all that stuff, you know? It didn't just start. It's always been that way. But there was pride in the Black community. There just seemed to be a pride that is missing now. And you could just see it everywhere, no matter where you go. It's, you know, people cursing, profanity. It doesn't matter. I take public transportation, and man, oh man, am I just sick of listening to other people's problems, and problems such that that I don't get. I don't know why you're sitting there with two children that obviously need to be cleaned and combed, and you're worried. And I'm listening to a young lady, she's worried about getting bail money. Are you kidding me? And the fact is, why is she putting her business out so everybody can hear it? I just don't get it. There just doesn't seem to be any pride anymore. And it really is frustrating. I sit on the bus and I watch young men get on and they roll their dope. Well, yeah, it's legal. Okay, that's not the question. Where you're doing it is inappropriate. And there doesn't seem to be anyone, they just don't seem to have it. That is inappropriate behavior for you to sit and roll a joint or a blunt when a kid is sitting 2 seats from you. It's just inappropriate. And we just seem to have lost that connection. That's once you're a parent, you are a parent and you are expected to act in a certain way. Now, you can't blame everything on the parents. You just can't. You can't blame everything on the parent. A lot of these, like I said, kids are being raised by a single mother who is working. So you can't blame everything on the parent. But a lack of discipline in the home, a lack of discipline in your kid, you can blame that on parents. When I was that age, and if you followed my career, my writings at the New Haven Register, if you followed me and when I talk on my podcast, I had a difficult childhood and teen years. And I was out there 24/7. I remember a woman, I was 13 years old, told my mother, James sure keeps Broadway hot, because I was out in the streets all the time. But I was not getting into trouble. I was out there because, I don't know, the open air or whatever helped me clear my mind and try to figure out what was going on with the bad thoughts in my head. But no crime. I wasn't breaking into stores. I wasn't stealing cars. I wasn't doing anything like that. So the idea that because I was poor or came from or being raised by a single mother was the reason why I was doing these things. No. Black people have always been poor. We're still poor. We're going to be poor. We're going to be poor for a long, long time. So I don't understand this thought process that everything has to do with poverty and lack of opportunity. It has always been that way for us, always, and it will continue for a while. So we can't use that as an excuse. That's a rallying cry for something else, but it is not an excuse for what is going on today. We lead the news. Think about that, folks. We lead the news. Crime, not for the good that we do, but for crime. I just don't get this. And I just don't get why nothing can be done about it. I was thinking over this weekend about something that happened about 5 or 6 years ago. I was still in the workforce when this happened. I retired in 2019 and was still kind of active until the middle of 2021. But I'm going to say about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 4 to 6 years, there was a young man who was arrested. And he was young, 19, 20, 21, somewhere around there. And he was crying and he was saying, I don't want to go back to jail. I don't want to go back to jail. And my response then, probably like everyone else is responsible, then why are you doing whatever you're doing? I think that he was robbing a store or breaking into a car or a home. I'm not really sure. That's your initial response. Then why are you doing this? But on reflection, I had to stop and think. We have so many young Black kids who come from just really parentless homes. And I'm not talking about the parents who are working and so forth. I'm just talking about parents who just don't care. And it's pretty obvious in a lot of cases. We have a lot of kids who are born to addicts, raised by perhaps their grandmother, by their grandmother who was already in her 60s or 70s as they were coming up. No discipline, no skills, no one to lead them. And suddenly they're 18, 19, 20 years old, 21, and they're expected to go out into the world, earn a living, be a good citizen. And they've had no training. They've been on their own. And I started thinking when he was crying and saying he doesn't want to go back to jail, maybe he just didn't know how. Maybe that's it. We all know with law enforcement, once you go down that road, it's tough. Man, it's tough. And I'm sure you'll agree, it's tough to get back on track. And if you have no support and you didn't have that family along the way, then who do you turn to? There's no one to turn to, really. So I've been thinking about that kid, and my response then was, well, why do it? And in retrospect, maybe he just didn't know any better. And I know that sounds strange, but I've seen it a lot. I've seen it in vacant stares and so forth. And the problem just is going to continue to get worse. And I think that a lot of us have just failed these kids because we know the problems. Those of us who have been successful, or certainly at my age, we've been through it. We've seen the communities change. We've seen these fatherless kids come along. We've talked about it. We sit in barbershops and talk about it. If we meet each other in the supermarket, we talk about it. And maybe we're failing too as a community in doing our part and not reaching back and not helping just one kid. I'm not saying you have to help a group. I mean, because the problem is huge, but you can't help just one and help guide just one. So there are solutions here. There are definitely solutions, but they can only be accomplished if we are united. And right now, the Black community is falling apart. I just hope we can get our heads together and stop this disassociation that is happening, where some of us are doing well, some of us not so well, and others just not good at all. The only change that can come is the change from us. If I had a hammer, I would hammer it, hammer it, hammer it, hammer it, hammer it. But I don't. All I have are words, but they are words that we should pay attention to. I'm James Walker, and I just had to get that off my chest. You folks have a good week. I hope you join us next week when we go back to Shamine's Kitchen. So you folks have a good week.